Hi Year 8, welcome back. Mrs. Calloway here narrating through these lessons. Well done for getting this far. This is the last lot of your recorded lessons. We will see you next week in school. Very, very exciting. So this week you've got lesson 18, 19 and 20 to do. If you want to jot a quick title, this is lesson 18. Now, I've thrown this in as a little bit of fun. I've done a little game just to keep you motivated, to make sure that you listen to each lesson and go through each lesson till the very end. At the end of each lesson, I've put a picture of a cute animal. Do you know what the animal is? I've put down there, can you name the animal? I don't mean call it Fred, I just mean, do you know? Are you able to identify the animal? You don't need to tell anyone your answer. Don't send it to your teacher. It's just to try and get you smiling by the end of these lessons. So let's crack on. So we're going to start with our do now. Sherlock Holmes had a dual nature. So this is going to link to the Tempest in a minute. But what does it mean, first of all, to have a dual nature? What does it mean? An extension thought here, what was Holmes's dual nature? Can you remember? If you were in my Year 8 class, you'll remember we used one of the words quite a lot. Okay, let's have a little look together. So Sherlock Holmes had a dual nature. If you have a dual nature, there are two sides to your character. There were two sides to Sherlock Holmes. The quiet, introspective, that's the word we used a lot, thoughtful side, and the manic, energetic, detecting side. So again, start to think about, where's this going to link? This idea of a dual nature, where's this going to link with the Tempest? We're going to come to that in a mo. And what we're going to do today in this recorded lesson is we're going to return to plot 3, the plot to kill Prospero. Now you've got some pictures. We've got Caliban on the left, Stefano in the middle. Remember, Stefano is a butler to the king, and Trinculo was a jester to the king. So let's return to plot 3, the plot to kill Prospero. Stefano and Trinculo want to kill Prospero. So Caliban also has a dual nature. That's where our link comes in. We're going to take a look at Caliban's dual nature today. And what I'd like you to do at this point is come up with an answer for this, and you might bullet point this if you prefer. Why would an audience dislike and hate Caliban? So thinking about what you know so far, why would an audience, and think about an audience of Shakespeare's day, why would they dislike and hate Caliban? You could also think about an audience of the modern world. What might they be thinking about Caliban? Pause the video now if you need a bit more time. So here are some reasons an audience might dislike Caliban. He's quite disgusting, he's rude, he curses a lot. He tried to assault Miranda, that's quite a big deal in this. He does not feel any regret for wanting to assault Miranda. He wants to kill Prospero in a violent and terrible way. He is easily impressed by stupid people, and he is not intelligent. So these might be some of the things an audience might feel in their dislike. But today we're going to see another side of Caliban. We are going to closely look at a passage that shows how sensitive he can be. So we're looking at the sensitive side here. A few things to kind of remind you of here. Ariel has made himself invisible. He's listening to Stefano, Trinculo and Caliban. And Caliban, Stefano and Trinculo have decided they are going to go and kill Prospero. So want to kill Miranda's father. Ariel starts making strange music and sounds. He wants to confuse and scare Stefano and Trinculo. Now remember, Ariel is Prospero's kind of servant spirit. So of course Ariel's listening in on what's going to happen to his master. And what we're going to look at is a soliloquy. And a soliloquy is a speech where a character speaks to himself or herself or to the people watching. A monologue, you might have heard of a monologue as well here, folks. So a monologue is actually a long speech by one person, but other characters are on the stage. So notice there's a difference between soliloquy and monologue. And today we'll be annotating a clean copy, so we'll be annotating a version of Caliban's monologue. So that tells us that Stefano and Trinculo are also on the stage. We will read it and reread it a number of times to unlock its meaning. And we're going to practice reading this like experts. Now, what we're going to do is on my screen, I'm going to show you different parts of this. And I'm going to ask you to follow along and write in your booklets. So in your booklet, you need page 20. If you need to run and find your booklet at this point, pause the video, go and find your booklet. You need to have your booklet to do this. Okay? And what I'd like to do, as the annotations come up on the screen, write them down. For some of you, it would actually be better if you turn the wording into your own wording, rather than just straight out copy what I've put. Okay? But see what you think. So first, let's read the monologue in its entirety. So this is Caliban and what he says. Be not afeard, the isle is full of noises, sound and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. Sometimes 1,000 twanging instruments will hum about mine ears, and sometime voices that if I had them waked after long sleep, will make me sleep again. And then, in dreaming, the clouds methought would open and show riches ready to drop upon me, that when I waked, I cried the dream again. Just give yourself a moment to think then. What are your first impressions of this monologue? It's really important, Year 8, that you think about your own opinion. Okay? Yes, it might look confusing, it might look complex, but actually, what do you think? Do you think it's meant to be positive? Do you think it's meant to be negative? Do you think it's meant to be some sort of song? And also remember, we said on an earlier slide that actually this is Caliban addressing and trying to make Trinculo and Stefano not feel scared anymore. He says, be not afeard. That means don't be afraid. So just have a little think for a moment. What do you think about this monologue? We're going to split the monologue up now, so make sure you've got your pen and your booklet, because you're going to need to write things down. On page 20 of your booklet, you should be able to find this and write down some of these thoughts as we annotate here together. So, be not afeard, the isle is full of noises, sounds and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. So what is the island full of? Try and locate the answer and circle it if you can. What is the island full of? Second question, underline all of the S sounds, S sounds in these two lines. How does this make Caliban's song calming for Stefano and Trinculo? And you might think that's quite a tricky thing to try and say. I mean, you might be thinking, well, how can I make a link to that being calming? But what you could say is that that kind of S sound is quite a soothing, it's a soft sound. S is a soft sound. It's a See if you can kind of conjure that as you're annotating and writing this on your piece of paper. It's about a kind of softness of that sound, okay? There's actually a word for this. I'm going to put it on the screen. So if you take a look down towards the bottom of my screen there in green, you'll notice that actually we've got a word for this repeated S sound. It's a word we use in English literature. The use of sibilants. It's a repeated S sound. So the use of sibilants makes Caliban's song calming for Stefano and Trinculo because they are soothing sounds. So again, I'm going to give you some moments to jot these things down as we're going. If you need a bit more time, then you'll need to pause the video, okay? But I will give you some moments now. And obviously the first one, the island's full of noises. So hopefully you've kind of circled, annotated noises. For some of you, you might want to add a bit extra. The island's full of noises. Well, what does that tell us about the kind of habitat that Caliban's been living in? So be not afeard, the isle is full of noises, sounds and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. Now let's look at the first 4 lines. So again, be not afeard, the isle is full of noises, sounds and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. Sometimes 1,000 twangling instruments will hum about mine ears, and sometime voices. What I'd like you to do is list 2 noises that Caliban hears on the island. So on your worksheet, perhaps circle them. What 2 noises does he say in those 4 lines? And then your second question, Caliban says he hears twangling instruments. How does this show that Caliban appreciates beauty? How does this contrast with Prospero's opinion of Caliban? So the idea there of twangling instruments, it's kind of like the sound of beautiful instruments. It makes me think actually of stringed instruments like a harp or something. But he says that the sound of the island, the noises the island make, sounds like 1,000 twangling beautiful instruments. So how does that line show us that he appreciates beauty? What does he appreciate? Again, I know you're doing this at home, but please try and write something on your sheet here. It's important that you have some input and kind of ownership of this. What do you think? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide, but if you want a bit more time, pause the video. So on here then I've just underlined 2 noises. He hears twangling instruments, he hears voices. And now I'm adding some thoughts here. For the second one, this is kind of my thoughts here. The fact that Caliban can hear the twangling instruments demonstrates his appreciation for beauty. So the fact that he can hear these noises and describes them as instruments, that's what shows us that he appreciates the noise of the nature around him. And it further counters the perception of the native which Prospero has presented. Remember, Prospero is the one that's conjured the image of Caliban as monstrous and ugly and horrible and incapable of kind of doing anything nice, whereas in this, Caliban's got a much more sensitive side. So let's look at the next bit. That if then had waked after long sleep will make me sleep again, and then in dreaming. So, questions at the bottom, things I'd like you to write down and think about on your sheet. Caliban repeats the word sleep and talks of dreaming. Is this extract like a lullaby? Possibly yes. So, how? How is it like a lullaby? What does this tell you about Caliban's character? And the second one, how does this compare to Prospero's description of Caliban as a devil? I'd suggest you actually pause the video at this point because I think these questions need a bit longer for you to think about and write some ideas down. But before you do, just think about lullabies. Who do you connect lullabies with? Why does that then give us a different understanding of Caliban's personality? Okay, so pause the video and see if you can jot a few things down. Okay, so on this slide there's some thoughts that I'm going to offer up. So this extract does sound like a lullaby. Caliban is trying to comfort Trinculo and Stephanos. Remember, he is trying to comfort them and reassure them because they're concerned about the strange sounds that they could hear coming from Ariel. They're frightened. So it shows Caliban does have a kind and sensitive side to him. Now for the second question, though Prospero describes Caliban as a devil, it's difficult to see that in this particular set of lines. In this monologue, Caliban is gentle and caring. We see Caliban's sensitive side. So again, you might want to pause the video and perhaps jot a couple of those things down if you didn't already have something similar. Likewise, you might have had some really good ideas yourself. Now let's look at the final 3 lines of the monologue. Here they are. The clouds methought would open and show riches ready to drop upon me, that when I waked I cried to dream again. So things I'd like you to think about. Firstly, the sounds of the island cause Caliban to dream. How would you describe his dreams? I think everybody can think of an answer to that here. How is he describing his dreams? The clouds, methought, that means I thought, the clouds I thought would open and show riches, money if you like, ready to fall upon me. So what's he dreaming of? Oops, there we go. Number 2, when Caliban wakes up, he cries because he wants to be asleep again. What does this tell you about Caliban's life? And does this change how you feel towards Caliban? Again, pause now because you're going to need a bit more time to answer those, I think. Write on your sheets your ideas. Again, I'm just offering up thoughts here. You might have your own ideas, as I've said. So let's have a look. I've put here, Caliban has pleasant, wonderful dreams where riches rain down on him. The island inspires Caliban. It actually brings out the best in him. Caliban's waking life is miserable. His dreams are so beautiful that he cries as soon as he wakes up, because for Caliban, being asleep is better than being awake. And the third one, what do you think? That means that question was purely down to your opinion. How does it change your view of Caliban? So you should now have an annotated copy that looks something like this. And again, if you need a moment to pause, then anything you see on there you think, oh yeah, I might write that down as well, then obviously you can. So at the top, sibilant's repeated S sound makes the song soothing. Noises that Caliban hears, he's got an appreciation for beauty. It gives the sense of a lullaby. He's comforting Stefano and Trinculo. And he's being gentle here, he's not being a savage here. Caliban imagines riches pouring out of the sky in his dream. And Caliban wants to escape his real life. His real life's miserable. And this, if you remember that word from last week's lesson, there's pathos. Shakespeare creates pathos for Caliban here. Pathos would be a super word to use in your annotations. So this time, now you've got that knowledge in mind, let's reread the monologue in its entirety. So I'll read it to you, or you might want to follow along or read it to yourself as well. Be not afeard, the isle is full of noises, sounds and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. Sometimes 1,000 twangly instruments will hum about mine ears, and sometimes voices that if I then had waked after long sleep, will make me sleep again. And then, in dreaming, the clouds methought would open and show riches ready to drop upon me, that when I waked I cried to dream again. So many people believe that Caliban has a dual nature. What do you think? Do you think Caliban has a dual nature? If you want to jot down your thoughts, of course, but for the minute you might want to actually think here. What are the two sides to Caliban? In your head, see if you can conjure up 2 words perhaps to describe the 2 sides of him. And lastly, think about which side of Caliban do you think is the truest version of him? So to finish off this lesson, to complete this lesson, what we'd like you to do is write down your own answer to this question. So you'll need a piece of paper or Word doc. How has this monologue changed your opinion of Caliban? So you'll need a few sentences for this. Doesn't need to be a big long answer for this. How has the monologue changed your opinion of Caliban? What do you now think? What have you learnt? Pause the video and jot down some lines for that question answer. And lastly, to finish this lesson, let's finish with a quick quiz question. What does this quotation suggest to a reader about Caliban? Be not afeard, the isle is full of noises, sounds and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. A. Caliban is scared of Prospero. B. The island is full of terrible sounds. C. Caliban thinks that the sounds on the island are peaceful and pleasant. D. Caliban prefers sleeping to being awake. E. Caliban feels very connected to the island. Which ones do you think are true? I'm just looking actually because I can see there is more than one correct answer here. I'm going to give you 10 more seconds to decide. Maybe jot it down. Okay, let's get ready to reveal, and you can check your own answers here. There we go, so we actually had 2 correct answers there. Caliban thinks that the sounds on the island are peaceful and pleasant, and Caliban feels very connected to the island, so C and E were correct. Well done if you got them right. So that's the end of lesson 18. Thank you for listening. As your treat, there is, I said it was going to be a cute animal. I'm looking now and I'm thinking actually it's quite a funny picture. I still think it's cute. But yeah, what animal is it? See you next for lesson 19.